Good morning, everyone. Dan Stanty here, along with Mike Stanty and Sano Stanty from the Sano Stanty Real Estate Group. Changing our schedule a bit, we're coming to you live on Friday morning, and hopefully some folks over the weekend get to take a look at this. So, just had some feedback that maybe there wasn't enough time on the weekend to get the view in. So, anyways, we're going to be talking about a couple things. Market cycles, the Stampede week here, and we're just kind of coming to the tail end of it, I suppose. But as we're experiencing a bit of a slower market in July, we're wondering if this is more of a typical market cycle. And then we're going to maybe chat about some interesting deals that we've come across in the last couple of months. So maybe I'll start this off with just a quick statistic, and just looking at our Real Broker showings, we had just under 1,200 viewings the last 10 days of June, which is, typically in a typical year, I think we'd see a bit of a slowdown at the end of June, and then again it tapers off a bit more into July, and so that's it's down about 20% in the first 10 days of July in terms of the number of showings across the board. So, and I feel it as well, just in terms of the number of calls that are coming in and issues being dealt with. There seems to be just a little less kind of froth and fever out there.
Sano, do you see any issues on the horizon for folks? It seems like the last 2 years have been pretty atypical, with 2020 being COVID and that sort of slowdown, and then 2021, it seemed like maybe the third week of January or whatever, just it picked up and started going and hasn't stopped. It's been pretty active and pretty steady. If we are getting back into a more regular market cycle where it's spring, then summer slowdown, and then fall, are there implications for buyers or sellers out there?
Well, it's interesting that a lot of these cycles intersect, and so there's a couple of cycles that we're subject to. In Calgary, anyway, Calgary is jokingly, we call it the boom bust city because of the oil, and a lot of times in the past we've followed really the price of oil, but it has seemed to go, and since about 1985, it seems to go in cycles of roughly 5 to 7 years, where between the trough and the peak of the market, and that's in terms of market activity and price. So we have, since about 2015, it seems that we've been in 2014 was sort of a peak, and then at 15 it started to decline, and we have been in decline since from 2015 to about 2019, 2018 or 19, I guess. And then COVID hit, and so that kind of intersected. So we were just, I had been calling the bottom for a while, around 2018, and so we're ready to take off, and then COVID hit, and we didn't take off right away, but then we certainly did in about 2020, 21, really it started to accelerate. So that, and that's contrary. And the other cycles that intersect are the national cycles. So we haven't been in sync with so much with Toronto and Vancouver. And the interesting thing there is that, they set the monetary policy in usually, down east in Toronto, in Ottawa. And so whenever they get overheated, they put policy in place that dampens the market nationally, just when we're ready to take off in Calgary, in Alberta, let's say. They put policies into place like the 1% increase, so now 1.5% increase in interest rates that we've just recently seen. So all of these cycles intersect. And then you spoke earlier, Michael and Daniel, about the seasonal, cycles, and typically in Calgary, it coincides with the trough or the summer doldrums coincide with the stampede. So we have a hot market coming into most of the activity in April, May, June, and then it kind of tapers off into the summer, coinciding with the beginning of stampede. So July and August, and then we have a less pronounced market in September, October, tapering off into Christmas, and then back again. So all of these cycles kind of weave together and intersect and influence one another. Now, last year, you made a good point, Michael, that COVID, we didn't really see our seasonal. It took off. It started to take off in January in 2021, and it just took off. It just like a steam engine, and it was hot right through the summer, and didn't really slow down. So, they don't always repeat, because last year they certainly, it wasn't typical. But over the last, 37 years that I've seen it, at least, they seem to follow those typical cycles.
Dan, do you think that based on the showings you can see and your general sense of it, that buyers and sellers should maybe prepare to settle back into those regular market cycles that we've seen over the last, as Sano said, 37 years?
I think so. And in fact, I'm just looking at the City of Calgary months of supply graph here going back the last 2 years, and the cycle is actually fairly pronounced in both 2021 and this year, where the summer months of supply did increase substantially and then came down. There's a peak in the summer, and we're starting to peak again here this month. So I think that we're probably going to return to that somewhat predictable, I suppose, cadence of having a bit of a slower summer. And what I found this year is that spring market, if you want to call it that, seemed to move right into January. There was no slowdown in January, February. But I think, we can expect to see some seasonality coming back to the market instead of just like a hot kind of push nonstop.
Right. I guess with the deals that we've done over the last year and a half in the hot markets, one of the items we're going to talk about was inspections. And sellers typically in that hot market have a little more leverage at inspection time. If there are issues, it's often the buyer needs to take on or shoulder a little more of that burden if there are deficiencies. Are there any inspection issues that have come up for you, Dan, in your last, say, 6 months that have been particularly challenging or just non-standard?
Good question. I think that there's so many issues that can come up. We had an interesting one with Poly B recently, where there was, we identified that there was Poly B piping in the house, and in this particular case, we knew about it when we made the offer, and the inspector and the buyer did further research and just got more clarity from their insurance company, contractors, and so on about what could be involved in rectifying that or replacing it, I suppose. And at the end of the day, the sellers were agreeable in participating in some of that replacement. And that was probably the most non-standard part about it, is that we see a lot of sellers, especially in this market, just saying,
No chance.
no chance. Yeah.
Yeah.
During that same one, it was an interesting sale in that there was a property siding onto a public pathway in a relatively new community. And oftentimes in those situations, you see on title a registered caveat or an easement for either the city or the community association to maintain those fences or retaining walls or what have you on those public pathways. In this case, there was none. And so it was a bit of a curious one, and something we flagged during our due diligence period. in this case, the buyer was satisfied that it was the city owned piece of property that's something they would maintain. But those are a couple interesting ones, and sometimes the absence of something that you would expect is as important as the presence when in talking of things on title like that. When you want to make sure that just whose responsibility is it, who owns it, how's it handled.
That brings up an interesting point that comes to mind. Airport caveats. So we see these on title often, and there's covenants on title that say you recognize that well, first of all, you can't build to a certain height, and that you're within the vicinity of an airport, and so I'm not sure if it eliminates the right that you can complain about being under a flight path or something. I'm not sure if it diminishes that right or not, but at least it flags it and says that that you're within the vicinity of an airport, and you're going to get air traffic, and you might have the odd airplane flying over your head. Well, when you're in the vicinity of a hospital, you often get helicopters and such, and I can say that this is a personal experience because within our vicinity we have helicopters flying quite low over our home sometimes, and there is nothing that the municipality can do about that. There's no caveat on title because airspace is federally regulated. So that's an interesting topic, and maybe a flag. If you are purchasing near a hospital, they could put in a heliport at any time, not just at a hospital, but at I suppose anywhere. Because
actually, that's a good point. I mean, if we're looking at Calgary specifically, there is a heliport down on Princess Island Park, or I don't know if it's on the island itself, but there's a heliport there right above the Peace Bridge, and we've sold properties 100 feet from the Peace Bridge, and there's no registration in terms of in Calgary. I think what they register is the noise exposure forecast, and there's a certain rating for how much noise you might expect being close to an airport. So that's something that you don't see when there's a heliport and really just the airports.
Yeah. So something to keep in mind. Keep your eyes open for that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But you, Mike, anything interesting in inspections?
Not so much at the inspection, but there was a seller that we had actually that was a bit of a delicate situation with the selling party who we were representing. And at the time of the inspection, there were a few minor issues that came up that we were happy to deal with. But at the walkthrough, one of the sellers had actually attempted to make some further repair that we weren't aware of or had anticipated, and did a bit of a shabby job doing so. So at the walkthrough, when they came through, the buyer saw a brand new patch underneath a window that wasn't there before and was poorly done. And so they said, well, hold on, we're a little curious now because we don't know what was back there before that he took out or what he put in or why. And so maybe that's just a note for sellers particularly, is that once you pass inspection, and it maybe is a similar line of thinking to your mortgage. When you go get your pre-approval, don't go buy a car, don't get a new credit card, don't take out some other new credit facility. For sellers, once you pass that inspection, stop. Like the home should be in the same condition when the buyer comes through to take possession as when they viewed it last. And you shouldn't have made changes in the meantime that they weren't expecting. That caused some heartache, and I actually had to go to the house, open the wall up, and show them, see, there's nothing nefarious here. But and thankfully the buyers had some work planned for that space anyways. But it did hold things up, and it made a challenging afternoon.
that's a question that's often raised, is how should I leave the home? Do we have to, do I have to clean it? Do I have to, bring cleaners in? Do I have to clean the carpets? And as you said, Michael, it's, in the same state of condition and repair as when they viewed it. So you don't necessarily have to clean it, but it's awfully nice to do that, to bring a cleaner through and hand over the home in a, pristine manner. It's just really appreciated and makes, well, it pays you back in good karma, I think, more than anything. It's just a nice way to pass your home on.
Yeah, I agree. And there's always by the same token, I tell buyers all the time that a home's, and I've heard this from you, that a home's not clean until you clean it yourself. So oftentimes there's a clause written in that the home has to be cleaned by a professional company on or before possession, and that's great. But there's always something that's missed, and even when that term is in there, a buyer comes through and is upset because it's not clean the way that they feel it should be cleaned. So that's a nice term to put in. It's a nice thing for sellers to do, but a home's not clean until you clean it yourself, up to your standards, and that can hold deals up occasionally too.
Yeah, and thank you for. I always think you never listen to me, but thank you. But to that point, you would rather have the buyer, like if it's a $500 cleaning job, have the buyer do it. Then the buyer can contract it himself to his standard. If we've had it done where the carpets have been shampooed, the entire house, and that was in the contract. And when the people came in, they said, hey, they showed the receipts, and they went, "Yeah, this is not up to our standard." Well, it was done to the seller's standard, to the company's standard. And so, yeah, you're quite right. Those kinds of conditions are cleanliness is a very subjective term, I think, because we've seen homes that are clean that, you would cringe, and homes that are spotless, and you think, wow, it goes both ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Dan, you mentioned you were a little short on time today. Do you want to chime in with anything else, or do we want to put a bow on it there?
Yeah, well, I was telling the story of an interesting situation with a multiple offer situation, I guess, that came up a few weeks back. That it was new to me, and I mean, I think it just it may be a demonstration of how an agent can really help to get the best deal for the client. So just to lay the framework here, we were on the listing side of a transaction, expecting and had received multiple offers, and this particular client was a little bit a little elderly, I suppose, and so my plan was to print the offers, bring them down to the client to review them in person, and have them sign the best offer. And of course, just during the drive between printing them off and getting to the clients, I had received 2 other offers by email and a phone call that a third was going to be coming. So we had a little, we got there and had to present the offers that we had on paper, presented the ones on the laptop or on the iPad that came in electronically. And the last one that was promised, the agent on the other side was having some technical issues and was having problems getting the document signed by their clients. And so, they had informed us what they intended the terms to be, and it was something that was absolutely worth waiting for, something worth even pitching in. So in that case, sitting there with my client, I wrote the offer on behalf of the buyer's agent, sent it to the buyers themselves to sign. It came back to me signed, and it was a fairly short process, about 20 minutes, and just taking the time to do that, netted our client just the best price of them all. It was unconditional, and the quickest closing that was offered amongst the group. So really kind of the best on all fronts, and so we were able to just get a fantastic deal signed up.
Winner, winner, chicken dinner.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was an interesting
That's
one.
right.
I've never had to
Good one.
write an offer for somebody else. Sitting there with a seller and then getting the deal done. So
I have had that actually, not quite writing the offer, but the other side having the similar technical difficulties, where I have then been sending the documents, making changes, and sending it to the other party, which is great and gets the deal done, but can also be. I wonder. It feels sometimes like you're towing a fine line there a little bit too, in terms of not interacting too much with that other party. But I suppose if you're just doing it in the spirit of getting the deal done, then
I think that's really the key point is that I think we've always had a culture of doing that, or maintained a culture of just helping the other agents and cooperating as much as possible, because we're all working to the same goal.
Mhm.
So that the spirit of that is what's behind it, and I think that's alive and well.
right on. Okay,
Great.
well, it feels like that's a nice way to cap it off, then, Dan, and you can zip off to your next meeting, and we can
Sounds good.
sign off. And I hope everyone has a great weekend. And
Yeah, Yahoo! Happy Stampede. We will be doing this again on the Friday, I suppose, and is our new time slot so that we can get some visibility over the weekend. We're just sort of playing with this as it's kind of a pretty informal chat. We talk about all things real estate. Look forward to the next one. If you guys in the audience have any questions that you'd want us to cover, we're an open book. We'd love to hear your suggestions for topics.
sure thing.
Very good.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, happy stampeding, and I'll talk to you at the end of July.
Take care.
Bye-bye.